Go ahead.
Okay, so our story was The Pit and the Pendulum by Edgar Allan Poe.
The characters, like the prisoner was the main one. You knew everything about him. The general
LaSalle.
he was the one that.
Well, that'll ruin the ending. But he's in there. Then there's torturers.
What the heck? What the heck?
Sorry.
Where's he going? You want that stuff?
Gail, are you going to take notes?
Oh, God, who's looking at the slide? Yeah. No, but I can listen to the slide.
The setting is he was in a torture chamber. It was a large square room. The man had originally thought the walls were made of stone masonry. They were very smooth, slimy, and cold. There is a giant hole in the floor. The man later learned that the walls were metal and the floors were also very slimy.
Riley, are you taking notes?
Yeah.
You typed all that?
Yeah. For all that?
You don't need all of it. You just need that it was. You basically need that it was.
I just
large
said it was a torture
square
chamber.
room and it was a torture
Torture
chamber.
chamber. Don't forget the hole.
Yeah, the pit is kind of an important part.
About the hole.
Okay, so this is the plot conflict. Basically, this man was sentenced to death. This is during the Spanish Inquisition, where you could basically be walking around and if someone thought that you did something wrong, you could be thrown in jail and sentenced to death and tortured until you died by any means necessary. So he was sentenced to death, and then he was knocked unconscious after going into court. Then when he wakes up in the torture chamber, and it's completely dark, you can't see anything at all. And he walks around the room trying to feel around to see how big the room is. And when he falls, trips and falls, and he's so exhausted that he just lays there and falls asleep. Then when he wakes up again, it's still dark, but he finds a plate with food and water, and he continues to feel around the wall to figure out how big the room is. He trips and falls again, and this time, when he falls, his chin is the only thing that's touching anything, so his whole body is laying on the ground, and his face is in this pit that he almost fell into, and he almost died. And then he gets up and moves away from the pit, which is in the middle of the room, and he stays awake for many hours, and then decides to drink some of the water, which was drugged, and then he falls asleep soon after.
When he woke up in the room, it was lit so that he could see. He was tied to his bed when he woke up. As he looks around the room, he sees a giant pendulum slowly swinging down towards him. He realizes that if he doesn't escape, he will slowly be cut in half by this razor sharp pendulum. He waits for the pendulum to cut his strap once, is then cut twice before he can roll off the bed. He also uses his leftover meat to.
That's later.
After he got off the bed, and he's still tied around his chest and arms, he can hear rats walking around, so he takes what is left of the meat and rubs it on the straps.
Thousands of rats run all over him and start chewing on the straps that he is tied to. They sometimes bite him instead of the straps. In his exhaustion, he fell asleep again. When he wakes up, he can smell the heat as iron. The walls of the room are now red hot and closing in on him, pushing him towards the pit in the middle of the room. He's almost going to be pushed into the pit, then suddenly the walls go back to their positions, and a hand reaches out to help the prisoner out. It is General Lassell.
That's just a good part of that. They run all over him.
So the ankles, wait.
So while you finish typing, when he wakes up for the second time and realizes that he is tied down to the bed, first thing he notices is that there's a little bit of light in the room, and so he looks around from his tied down position and sees that the room is actually much larger than he originally thought. Then he's like, I wonder where that light is coming from. So he looks up, and I envision this as like a well, okay? And he's in the middle of the well. It continues down. So the pit is far, far down. He can't see the bottom of it when he, or doesn't, I think he like throws a pebble in there and it makes the really long echo sound like it was a long drop. Okay, but then he looks up and it's like the grate had been removed from a manhole cover. You know, the cover has been removed and there's a little light coming around this circular area. But the more he looks, he sees this flash. And he's strapped down. And for hours, he watches this pendulum with a razor-sharp blade, like a scythe, really, swinging toward him. And he's strapped to the bed. And he's just lying there for hours, watching his death approach him with absolutely no way to get out. So while he's strapped there, to add to his suffering, rats begin to climb out of the pit. And they're walking all over him. It says they touch his lips and his eyes and his ears. Okay? Also, next to him is food, and he can reach with one hand. And he grabs this meat, and he can actually smell it from lying. It smells so pungent, which is like not a smell, a word that you would use to describe food that you want to eat. And he realizes suddenly, oh my gosh, he takes that meat and he rubs it on the leather strap on his other hand and on his chest. And then what do the rats do? They start chewing at it. As the blade gets closer, what happens to a pendulum the longer it swings? The faster and the wider its arc gets. So as it comes down, it's getting every swoop, it moves a little faster, a little faster, a little faster. And the swing gets wider and wider. So the rats, when the blade comes near them, they will scurry away. Then they'll run back on him. Then they'll scurry away. Okay, so it's this constant ebb and flow. Razor, rats, razor, rats. Hours this goes on. Eventually, the rats chew through the binding on his one wrist so that he can start working the other ones. But in the meantime, that razor has already cut him twice. Right on the chest. And I have never been able to figure out if the razor cuts him this way or this way. But he says it's positioned over his heart. So I'm not sure if it cuts him vertically or horizontal or diagonal. But anyway, he's cut. And he has on this really lightweight kind of like robe thing. And it's basically fallen away because the razor sliced through it. The first time the razor got him, all it did was slice off his robe. The second time, it actually cuts his skin. P.S. There's rats on him still. And now he's bleeding and naked.
Nice.
Okay?
They better be careful. They might go for a sausage or something.
Okay, so then, as soon as so the rats / razor release him from his bindings. So he rolls off the bed. As soon as he rolls off the bed, the pendulum is pulled away. So someone is watching every second. And he's like, oh, thank God I escaped. Like, I'm going to survive. And suddenly he can smell something. And it takes him a minute to realize what he smells is heated iron. And then he notices that the rats are beginning to go back into the pit. Yeah, because his square chamber is becoming rectangular. Because the walls are moving in on him. And in the middle of this room is a deep, dark pit full of rats. And the walls are heating up, so he can't just go lean against the walls to try to stop them. They're on fire. And just as his tippy toes get to the edge of the pit, he's rescued.
What a coincidence.
Just like that, and the story's over.
Yeah, and that's how it ended. It's like, and he's safe.
So, while some of your stories detail the mental torture associated with, like, mental illness, possibly, like the Black Cat and the Telltale Heart, this one is more about psychological trauma. How does a person come back from this? Okay, go ahead.
Book about it.
So then, the theme was like depravity of your senses. I don't think I like the first 4 words. It is 4 words.
So I just said some of the other stories are about the psychological illness. This one,
Bro, calm down.
This one is about exploring our sensory reactions to our surroundings. And this story focuses on the senses. What the narrator sees, smells, hears, tastes. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so the first part of the symbolism was the sight where he couldn't see anything. If you've ever been in a completely dark room, you don't know where that is. Like, you don't know where you are. It can be very, obviously, very scary. And then he falls. Yeah, he falls asleep, and then after he wakes up, he can see the size of his room, and you can see. This is when he's strapped down to the bed. You can see the sharp pendulum swinging down towards him, and like that would just be terrifying to just watch your inevitable doom. I almost did.
Okay. After being with the body, he wakes up and he smells burning hot iron. What's up to
The walls were also like, when in the story it says the walls were like red hot, so you could tell that it was obviously burning.
Taste. The meat which was given to him was very seasoned, so it made him thirsty, as he became more dehydrated.
Okay.
Sorry.
Just put meat equals dehydrated. Nick, go ahead. Oh, that. Yeah. Go ahead. Sorry.
So then he wakes up, and when he wakes up in the dark room, he doesn't know where he is, but he can hear the pendulum. You can hear the swinging of the pendulum as it goes.
Just put pendulum swinging.
Like, you don't need all of it.
Why are you trying to make us up?
That's how you take notes, people. Notes is not copying word for word.
The first thing that he feels are the disgusting slimy walls that surround him. Then the pit he almost falls into. Then he feels the pendulum cutting him twice. One of the last things he feels are those rats running over his face and going slowly by the straps. And also him.
I didn't word that right. I was trying. Oh, I couldn't focus last night.
Yes. Okay.
Let's go, baby.